I felt my reality shatter when I opened that live stream link and saw another man, a complete stranger, sitting in the seat I'd paid for. My name is Paul Garner, and I'm 46 years old. Each morning, I wake in my modest 3-bedroom home, make coffee, and try not to stare at the empty photo frames where family pictures once stood. My daughter Lily Garner, who I taught to ride a bike and whose college tuition I covered, told me with rehearsed words that I should just watch online. My ex-wife Dana Miller encouraged this betrayal, while her new husband Rick positioned himself as the replacement father figure. Even Lily's fiancé, Trevor Bloom, participated in this calculated erasure of my existence. I refuse to be treated as nothing more than a blank check. When someone tries to delete you while keeping your wallet accessible, there comes a point where principles must stand. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. But let me start from the beginning. 2 days before the wedding, I pulled into Dana's driveway, my tires crunching over the perfectly maintained gravel. The house loomed before me, bigger than anything I could afford on my salary. My weathered Toyota looked out of place among the gleaming luxury vehicles. I sat for a moment, straightening my tie and gathering my thoughts. Under my arm was a black binder containing every contract I'd signed for Lily's wedding. $47,000 worth of promises on glossy paper. Each page represented overtime shifts and careful budgeting. Not that anyone had bothered to ask. The front door swung open before I could knock. Dana stood there, perfectly put together as always, in pressed khakis and a cream blouse. Her hair was styled in that salon-fresh way that always made me wonder how much it cost. "Paul," she said, her tone neutral but her eyes assessing. "You're early." A broad-shouldered man appeared behind her. He looked about my age, maybe mid-40s, with a balding head and the kind of firm handshake guys like him practice in mirrors. I figured he was some cousin or family friend I hadn't met. "I'm on time, actually," I replied, stepping inside when she reluctantly moved aside. The foyer smelled like citrus and fresh flowers, Dana's signature scent. The man nodded at me with an odd smirk. "Rick," he said simply, extending his hand. I shook it, noting his grip was unnecessarily tight. Compensating for something, probably. I'd seen his type before, the kind who measures manhood by handshake pressure. Before I could say anything more, footsteps sounded on the stairs. Lily descended with Trevor close behind her. My daughter looked beautiful, her dark hair swept back, her face bright with that pre-wedding glow. For a second, I saw the 5-year-old who used to beg me to twirl her until we both got dizzy. "Dad," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Thanks for coming." Trevor followed, all country club confidence in his polo shirt and designer jeans. His practiced smile revealed perfect teeth that probably cost his parents a small fortune. We moved to the living room. I sat alone on the love seat while Dana and Rick took the couch. Lily perched on the armrest next to Trevor, who stood with one hand in his pocket, casual, yet somehow formal. "So," I said, patting the binder, "I've got all the contracts here. Thought we could go through last-minute details." An uncomfortable silence settled over the room. Lily and Dana exchanged a look I'd seen many times before. The kind that used to precede Dana telling me I'd done something wrong. "Dad," Lily finally said, her voice carefully measured, "we need to discuss the seating arrangements." I nodded, flipping open the binder. "Sure. I assumed I'd be in the front row. Aisle seat. Traditional spot for the father of the bride." Trevor cleared his throat. "Sir, the Blooms have a certain vision for the ceremony. The aesthetics and, well, the optics are important." I looked up, confused. "Optics?" "What Trevor means," Lily continued, "is that it might complicate things. Your seat, I mean." "Complicate how?" I asked, though something in my chest was already tightening. Dana leaned forward. "Paul, we think it would be best if you watched the ceremony online. They're having it professionally streamed. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. Online? You want me to stay home? It's just simpler this way, Lily said, not meeting my eyes. Less drama for everyone. Trevor nodded. Sir, this day is about Lily. We need everything to go smoothly. Low drama would be best. My mouth went dry. I closed the binder slowly, feeling every eye in the room on me. So, I'm not welcome at my daughter's wedding. The wedding I'm paying for? Dad, Lily sighed. Of course you're welcome. Just maybe watching from home would be better. For everyone. I stared at her, searching for the daughter I raised. Something in her eyes had changed, or maybe I was just seeing clearly for the first time. I understand, I said finally, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. I'd never ruin your day, Lily. Relief visibly washed over her face. Thank you, Dad. I knew you'd understand. I stood, clutching the binder against my chest like armor. Rick was watching me with that same strange smirk. I nodded at him, assuming he was some family friend who'd been roped into wedding preparations. The drive home was a blur. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, replaying Lily's words in my head. Just watch online. It's simpler this way. The Blooms have a vision. Evening light faded over my dashboard as reality sank in. I wasn't just uninvited. I was being erased. I drove home on autopilot, my thoughts too loud to notice much else. The sun had nearly set by the time I pulled into my driveway. The house was dark and quiet, waiting for me like it always did, judgment-free. Inside, I flicked on the kitchen light and set the binder down on the table with a thud that echoed in the empty room. The coffee from this morning was still in the pot. I poured myself a cup, not caring that it was stone cold. Sometimes bitter is exactly what you need. I pulled out a chair and sat down heavily, running my hand over the leather binder that held all the financial commitments I'd made for my daughter's perfect day. I'd been saving for years, putting away a little each month, even when money was tight. For what? To be told to stay home and watch on a screen like some distant relative? One by one, I pulled out the contracts and spread them across the kitchen table. Venue, catering, florist, string quartet, shuttle buses, all in my name, all with my signature, all paid for with my money, money that represented thousands of hours of work. I noticed something odd on the catering invoice. There were additions I didn't remember approving. An oyster tower, champagne upgrades, extended bar package. Each addition was initialed, not by me, but by someone else. R.M. Rick, that man at Dana's house. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Rick Miller, Dana's new husband. The smirking stranger who'd shaken my hand like he was doing me a favor. My hands trembled as I flipped through more documents. There it was again. R.M. authorizing valet parking I never discussed. R.M. upgrading the floral arrangement. R.M. extending the venue rental by 2 hours. They hadn't just cut me out of the wedding. They were using me like an open checkbook while planning to put Rick in my rightful place. The front row aisle seat, the father's seat, would be filled by a man who'd contributed nothing but his signature on my dime. I reached for my coffee, finding it had gone from cold to freezing, like my insides. A new thought formed, quiet but clear. If I'm not welcome, neither is my money. But I wouldn't confront them. Not yet. Making a scene would only confirm whatever they'd told themselves about me. That I was difficult, embarrassing, someone to manage and minimize. Instead, I methodically sorted the papers into piles. This contract had a 48-hour cancellation clause. That one required written notice. This venue's insurance was in my name. Without it, they couldn't legally open their doors. This caterer needed final confirmation and my credit card present on delivery. I had levers to pull. Quiet, legal, dignified levers. As I organized, a memory surfaced. Lily at 13, practicing walking in her mother's heels with a pillowcase draped over her head as a makeshift veil. "You'll be there to walk me down the aisle, right, Dad?" she'd asked, so serious despite the ridiculous get-up. "Even if I'm nervous?" "Especially if you're nervous," I'd promised. My hands stilled over the binder. Had I changed so much? Had she? Or had Dana and her new husband poisoned what we had? I checked my watch. It was almost midnight. The wedding was in 2 days. I set an alarm on my phone for Saturday morning, early enough to join the live stream as requested. I would do exactly as they asked. I would stay home and watch. And if that stream showed Rick sitting in my seat, if I saw with my own eyes what they were really doing, well, I'd be ready. I carefully restacked the contracts, each in its proper pile. One for cancellation methods, one for day of insurance dependencies, one for payment authorization controls. Everything organized, everything prepared, just in case. Just in case they pushed me past the point of dignity. I switched off the kitchen light, leaving the binder and its organized contents waiting in the dark. "I'll stay home," I whispered to the empty room, "but it'll be on my terms, not theirs." The morning of my daughter's wedding day, I was up before dawn. Strange how habit works. I'd woken at 5:30 for decades, and my body didn't know this Saturday was any different. I brewed coffee in the kitchen, strong enough to stand a spoon in, and carried it to my living room. The silence felt heavy. My laptop sat on the coffee table, ready for the live stream. Next to it, my phone and the folder with every contract detail. My hands were steady as I opened the computer and clicked the link Lily had sent, following her instructions to the letter. "Watch online," she'd said. So that's what I was doing. The stream buffered, then opened to a view of the venue. The rustic barn with its weathered beams transformed by flowers and gauzy white fabric. The floral arch I'd paid for stood at the front, exactly as described in the invoice, white roses and greenery cascading in elegant curves. The chairs were arranged in neat rows, white cushions catching the morning light streaming through tall windows. Everything looked perfect. Everything I'd funded over the past 18 months laid out just as planned. The camera panned across the room as guests began filing in. I recognized a few faces, distant cousins, Dana's friends, some of Lily's college roommates. The videographer moved toward the front rows, focusing on what they clearly considered VIP seating. And there he was, Rick Miller, occupying the aisle seat in the front row, the father's seat, my seat, the place I'd pictured myself since Lily was a kid playing dress-up. He had his arms stretched casually behind Dana's shoulders, leaning back with a satisfied smile. Like he belonged there, like he'd earned it. In that moment, it all clicked. The way Dana had introduced him so casually at the house, the unauthorized signatures on the invoices, the careful way Lily had phrased things. "It's simpler if you watch online." Rick wasn't some family acquaintance. He was Dana's new husband, and they'd given him my place. I'd been written out of the story entirely, kept as the wallet, removed as the father. The coffee in my mouth turned bitter. I set the mug down with a finality that felt like a gavel strike. My decision crystallized, clean and sharp. I picked up my phone and the folder. First call, the venue manager. "Good morning, Janet. Paul Garner here." "Paul, everything looks beautiful. The florists just finished setting up." "Quick question. The insurance certificate, that's still under my name, correct?" "Yes, we have it on file. Is there a problem?" "Actually, there is. I'm withdrawing that certificate, effective immediately." A pause. "You can't. That means we can't legally open the doors." "I understand. I'll email the formal notice right away." I hung up and sent the email, then moved to the next call. The caterer, Mark. "Mark, it's Paul Garner. I need to confirm something about today's final payment." "Of course, Mr. Garner. We're loading up now. Everything's on schedule. The final authorization token and same-day settlement. They're still pending my approval, correct?" "Yes, sir, as per contract." We'll run the final third when we arrive, around 11. I'm revoking that authorization, Mark. I'll cover your cancellation fees per our agreement, Section 12B. But the event itself won't proceed under my financial responsibility. His voice dropped. Sir, the wedding is in 3 hours. I'm aware of the timing. Please check your email for the cancellation notice. One by one, I called them all. The quartet, the florist, the shuttle service. Each conversation was similar, polite, direct, and final. I assumed all cancellation penalties personally. I made sure each vendor understood I would pay what I owed them for their time and preparation. This wasn't about hurting small businesses. This was about boundaries. By 10 o'clock, it was done. I set my phone down on the coffee table just as it began to vibrate, with incoming calls and messages. Dana's name flashed on the screen, then Lily's, then numbers I didn't recognize. I let them ring. On the live stream, now forgotten in the background, people milled about in confusion. The camera still ran, capturing the beginning of the chaos. I closed the laptop. Dignity has a cost. I'd just paid mine. My phone buzzed for the 20th time, but this was the first call I answered. What have you done? Dana's voice cut through the speaker, sharp as broken glass. I watched the live stream buffer on my laptop screen, then freeze completely. The feed went black a moment later, displaying a connection lost message. Fitting. Hello to you too, Dana, I said, keeping my voice level. Don't you dare act calm. What have you done? Each word was precise, controlled rage. Exactly what you asked. I leaned back in my kitchen chair. You wanted me at home. Now my funding's home too. You've humiliated Lily. Her voice cracked. There are 80 people standing around wondering what's happening. The venue staff won't let anyone in. The caterers packed up and left. Do you have any idea what you've done to your daughter? I took a slow breath. I spared her public humiliation. What are you talking about? I could have let everything proceed, then disputed the charges afterward. That would have meant the venue coming after her, the caterer demanding payment during the reception, the quartet walking out mid-ceremony. Instead, I handled it privately. I even paid the cancellation penalties myself. You call this private? She was shouting now. Everyone knows! Everyone! That's on you and Trevor. I made quiet phone calls. You're the ones making a scene. She exhaled, and I could picture her running a hand through her hair like she always did when recalculating. Paul, you need to fix this. Now. There's nothing to fix. You decided I wasn't necessary as a father, just as a checkbook. I've withdrawn from both roles. This isn't about you. This is Lily's wedding day. Was Lily's wedding day, I corrected. And yes, this is absolutely about me. About respect. The line went dead. I set the phone down and walked to the kitchen sink, filling a glass with water. My hand wasn't entirely steady. By dusk, the doorbell rang. I knew it wouldn't be Dana again. Not yet. When I opened the door, Megan stood there, her face a mixture of fury and distress. What were you thinking? She asked, pushing past me into the living room. Hello to you too, I said, closing the door. Paul, she's still your daughter. Do you really want her wedding ruined? Do you want to destroy your relationship with her completely? I gestured to the couch. Sit down. I don't want to sit. Please, Megan. She reluctantly perched on the edge of the sofa. I went to the kitchen table and brought back the binder, then sat beside her. Look at these, I said, opening to a section of highlighted charges. Extra raw bars that I never approved. Extended premium liquor packages. Valet service that wasn't in the original plan. So they added some things. It's a wedding. Things come up. With Rick's signature authorizing them on my credit card, I said, pointing to the scrawled name at the bottom of each form. Without my knowledge or consent. She frowned. That's not right, but there's more. I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot of texts between Trevor and someone named Jason. I'd highlighted one exchange. Trevor. Once the old man covers the last invoice, we'll move the gift money to the down payment. Jason. All of it? Nice. Trevor. We deserve a better starter home than that dump her dad suggested. Megan's face fell. When did you get this? This morning. From you, actually. Her eyebrows shot up. From me? The voicemail you forwarded. From your neighbor, Caleb? He was at Trevor's bachelor party last weekend. Recognition dawned on her face. Oh, God. I sent that this morning before the ceremony. I didn't even listen to it. Caleb just said I should hear what Trevor was saying when he was drunk. Listen now, I said, playing the audio file. Trevor's slurred voice filled the room. And the best part is, old man Garner's paying for everything. Lily doesn't even know I added like 15 grand in upgrades. Laughter in the background. By the time we're done, we'll have enough wedding gifts to cover half the down payment on that place in Oakwood. More laughter. Hey, he wanted to help with a starter home. We're just aiming higher than he planned. Megan looked sick. Paul, I had no idea. I know you didn't. But now you understand. She rubbed her forehead. So you pulled the plug on everything. I exercised my legal right to withdraw financial support from people who were exploiting me. I closed the binder. I handled it privately, absorbed the penalties, and removed myself from the equation, just like they wanted. But Lily made her choice when she decided I wasn't important enough to sit in the front row at her wedding, but I was important enough to foot the bill. Megan's shoulders sagged. She doesn't see it yet. She will, I said. Regret doesn't grow in shade. I walked to the front window as the sky dimmed to deep blue. The first stars were appearing when my phone buzzed with a text. Lily's name appeared on the screen. Dad? The quartet says no contract. What's going on? I watched the phone vibrate against the kitchen table. Lily's name flashed on the screen with each new message, the bright display illuminating the darkened room. I didn't reach for it. Not yet. 11:47 p.m. Dad? The quartet says no contract. What's going on? The phone went still for 19 minutes. I sipped cold coffee and waited, knowing what would come next. The storm was just beginning. 12:06 a.m. Please answer. Another pause. I walked to the sink and rinsed my mug, set it in the rack to dry. Behind me, the phone lit up again. 12:22 a.m. Why are you doing this to me? Not to you, I thought. For me. There's a difference. I picked up the phone, thumb hovering over the messages, but instead of responding, I turned it face down on the table. The screen glowed against the wood for a moment before darkening. My kitchen felt both empty and peaceful. The digital clock on the microwave read 12:27. I slid the folder of receipts closer and opened it, spreading each vendor acknowledgement across the table. The quartet's cancellation fee, $750, paid in full from my account. The venue's insurance withdrawal notice with the remaining deposit forfeit, $4,200. The catering company's last-minute cancellation penalty, $2,800. The florist, $900. Transportation service, $100. All paid. All penalties absorbed by me. All handled quietly, privately. I ran my fingers over the bottom of each receipt where my signature appeared. No drama. No scene at the venue. No public humiliation for Lily. Just the quiet dignity of refusing to be used. When I was 10, my father told me that a man who lets himself be walked on becomes the path that others take to where they want to go. I didn't understand it then. Now, I felt it in my bones. The sense of vindication tasted both sweet and bitter, like dark chocolate that lingers on your tongue. Sweet, because I'd finally stood up. Bitter, because it had come to this. I remembered Lily at 8, holding my hand as we crossed the street to her elementary school. How she'd looked up and asked if I would walk her down the aisle someday. Of course, I'd promised, Front row seat after that, watching you shine. The memory carved into me like a knife into soft wood. Standing up for yourself isn't painless. It can hurt like hell even when you're right. The phone lit up again. 12:39 a.m. Dad, please. 2 words that could crumble mountains. 2 words that had made me move heaven and earth for her since she was born. 2 words that had emptied my savings account for a wedding where I wasn't welcome. I picked up the phone, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. What would I even say? That I was sorry? I wasn't. That I'd fix it? I couldn't. That she'd understand someday? Maybe she never would. The screen's glow illuminated my face in the dark kitchen. For a moment, I felt myself wavering. One message could restart everything. I could apologize, reinstate the contracts, swallow my pride, and let them all continue as planned. But then what? Then I'd be teaching her that boundaries don't matter, that respect is optional, that I would finance my own erasure with a smile. I powered the phone off completely. Black screen. Silence. Done. I rinsed my coffee mug one more time, wiped down the counter, and turned off the kitchen light. The receipts I left spread across the table. A paper trail of consequences. Upstairs, I changed into worn flannel pajama pants and an old t-shirt. I brushed my teeth, splashed water on my face, and climbed into bed. The ceiling above me was barely visible in the darkness. Did I do the right thing? I whispered to the empty room. No answer came, just the faint tick of the hallway clock and the occasional car passing on the street outside. I rolled onto my side, pulling the blanket up to my shoulder. Tomorrow would bring new battles. Tomorrow, they'd probably show up at my door, furious and demanding. Tomorrow, I'd need to stand firm again. But tonight, I just wondered if she would ever understand. If comprehension would ever replace the accusation in those texts. If she would ever see that this wasn't about hurting her, but about refusing to let myself be hurt anymore. The morning sun slanted through my kitchen window, catching dust motes in its beam. I'd been up since 5, sitting with my 3rd cup of coffee, waiting. The silence felt heavy, anticipatory. I knew they'd come. At precisely 8:10, the doorbell rang. I set my mug down, smoothed my shirt, and walked to the door. No rushing, no hesitation. When I pulled it open, the tableau on my porch was exactly what I'd expected. Lily's face was pale and drawn, mascara smudged beneath her eyes. Dana stood rigid beside her, lips pressed into a thin line. Rick loomed behind them like an enforcer, and Trevor, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him, kept glancing at his phone. "Dad," Lily said, her voice cracking, "the venue is locked. They won't let us in." I nodded once, holding the door frame. The insurance certificate was under my name. I withdrew it yesterday morning. "You... what?" Her shoulders slumped. "Why would you do that?" "Because I wasn't welcome at the event. So neither was my financial responsibility." Dana stepped forward, her eyes flashing. "You spiteful, small, petty excuse for a—" I raised my hand, cutting her off. "Say another word in that direction, and I'll itemize every single way you and Rick tried to spend me past empty. Every unauthorized charge, every added extra. I have the receipts. All of them." Her mouth snapped shut. Trevor edged forward, his country club smile now strained and desperate. "Sir, look, let's be practical here. Just pay today. Get things moving again. We can settle all this later." I met his gaze directly. "You mean after the gifts clear? After you move the money to the down payment?" His face went slack. "I don't know what you're—" "Don't finish that sentence with a lie," I said quietly. "I have the texts, Trevor. I have the voicemail to your buddy from the bachelor party." Rick moved then, chest puffed out, stepping close enough that I could smell his aftershave. He put a heavy hand on my shoulder. "Be a man about this, Paul. Your daughter's wedding day isn't the time for whatever point you're trying to make." I looked down at his hand until he removed it, then back to his face. "I am being a man," I said evenly. "This is what it looks like. Standing up and saying no when people try to use you." The silence stretched between us. Lily's eyes darted between Trevor and me, confusion clouding her face. "Dad," she finally whispered, "I don't understand. Why are you doing this?" "Why now?" "Because watching online while Rick sits in my seat was the final insult," I said, surprised at how steady my voice remained. "Because I've been reduced to an ATM, and I'm done with it." Her face crumpled. "We can fix this. Just put the insurance back. Please, Dad." I shook my head. "I can't do that, Lily." "You mean you won't?" Dana snapped. "Yes," I agreed. "I won't." Trevor was already on his phone, turning away, speaking rapidly to someone. Rick put his arm around Dana, glaring at me like I was something he'd found on the bottom of his shoe. Lily just stood there, tears tracking down her cheeks. "I paid for everything," I said softly to her. "And then I was told to stay home and watch online. That's not how respect works." She didn't answer. After a moment, she turned and walked back to the car, shoulders hunched. The others followed in disarray, already making frantic calls. Trevor was gesturing wildly, his voice rising as he argued with someone on the other end of the line. I closed the door quietly and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. The house felt emptier than before. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Megan's name flashed on the screen. "Hello? Paul." Her voice was strained. "What did you do?" "Dana's calling everyone. The Blooms are telling guests you canceled everything out of spite. People are saying you ruined Lily's life." A cold weight settled in my stomach. "That's not what happened." "I know that," she said. "But they don't. Lily's friend Emma just posted that you destroyed everything because you couldn't handle not being the center of attention. It's getting ugly, Paul." I sank down onto a kitchen chair, suddenly feeling the weight of it all. Had I miscalculated? Gone too far? For the first time since I'd made my decision, doubt crept in like a chill. "I just wanted them to respect basic boundaries," I said quietly. "I know," Megan sighed. "But right now, you're the villain in their story." I ran a hand over my face, feeling the stubble I hadn't bothered to shave. The morning sun had moved across the counter, no longer reaching my coffee mug. It had gone cold, anyway. I sat heavily at my kitchen table, Megan's words echoing in my head. "You're the villain in their story." That wasn't what I'd intended. I just wanted to take back the dignity they'd stripped away, to stop being the wallet they could all use while erasing me from the picture. My coffee had gone cold, forgotten in the chaos of the morning. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. A normal Saturday for everyone else. I rubbed my temples, feeling the beginning of a headache forming behind my eyes. The doorbell rang again at 10:30, jarring me from my thoughts. I knew who it would be before I even reached the door. They stood on my porch in a tight formation. Trevor at the front, Dana and Rick flanking him like bodyguards. Lily wasn't with them this time. Trevor's face was composed but tense, like someone who'd rehearsed a speech but wasn't confident in its delivery. "Can we come in?" he asked, his voice clipped and professional. I stepped aside silently, letting them file into my living room. No one sat down. Trevor cleared his throat. "Mr. Garner, I think we all got off on the wrong foot this morning." Emotions were running high. I waited, saying nothing. "We've been discussing the situation," he continued, smoothing his already perfect hair. "And I believe we can reach a compromise that works for everyone." "What kind of compromise?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "If you restore the funding and insurance certificates immediately, we can acknowledge your contribution. We'll credit you as an honorary sponsor in the program." His smile was practiced, the kind you'd use to close a business deal. "Lily can even thank you during her speech." Dana nodded eagerly. "It's the perfect solution, Paul. You get recognition, and Lily gets her wedding back." Rick stood with his arms crossed, watching me with narrow eyes. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I walked over to my desk and pulled out a manila envelope I'd prepared earlier after Caleb had sent me that voicemail. "Before I respond to your offer," I said, returning to where they stood, "I'd like you all to look at something." I held the envelope for a moment, feeling its weight. Not just the paper inside, but what it represented. The truth I'd discovered too late. "What's that?" Dana asked, her voice suddenly wary. Without answering, I slid the envelope across the coffee table. Trevor stared at it but made no move to pick it up. Rick shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "Open it," I said quietly. Dana reached for it first, flipping open the metal clasp. She pulled out the contents, a neat stack of papers, each one a piece of evidence I'd collected. Her eyes widened as she looked at the first page, a screenshot of Trevor's text message about the old man, and moving the gift money to a down payment. Behind that were itemized copies of every unauthorized charge Rick had approved using my card: the Oyster Towers, the extended bar package, the valet parking, and a dozen other extras I'd never agreed to. "What is this?" she whispered, but her face told me she already knew. "Keep going," I said. The third item was the most damning. A typed transcript of the voicemail Caleb had recorded at Trevor's bachelor party. I'd listened to it once and couldn't stomach hearing it again, so I'd transcribed every word. "Dude, it's all falling into place. The old man's covering everything, even the shit we added last minute. Once we get the wedding gifts, we're dumping it straight into the down payment. He thinks it's going toward their start in life or whatever. Best part? Dana's keeping him sweet so he doesn't ask questions. The mother-in-law is actually useful for once, right? And Rick's playing along perfectly. Lily has no idea. She thinks Daddy's just being generous. By the time they cut the cake, we'll be halfway to that house in Oakwood." Rick's face had gone red. Dana was staring at the paper, shaking her head slowly. "Where did you get this?" Trevor demanded, his cool demeanor cracking. "Does it matter?" I asked. "Is it accurate?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. The front door opened then, and Lily walked in. She must have been waiting in the car, perhaps summoned by a text when their negotiation wasn't going as planned. "Dad, please," she started, then stopped when she saw their faces. "What's going on?" No one spoke. Dana was still holding the papers, her knuckles white. Lily crossed the room and took the pages from her mother's unresisting hands. Her eyes scanned the first page, then the second. When she reached the transcript, she began reading aloud, her voice growing quieter with each word. "The old man's covering everything, even the shit we added last minute. Once we get the wedding gifts, we're dumping it straight into the down payment." Her voice faltered, then strengthened as anger replaced shock. "Lily has no idea. She thinks Daddy's just being generous." She looked up at Trevor, her face pale but composed. "Is this true?" Lily stared at Trevor, trembling like she'd been standing in a freezing wind. The papers shook in her grip. "Answer me," she said. "Is this true? Were you planning to use our wedding gifts for a down payment?" Trevor's face went through a rapid series of expressions: shock, calculation, and finally a weak attempt at charm. "Babe," he started, reaching for her arm. "Do not babe me." She jerked away from him. "Is this true?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Trevor ran a hand through his carefully styled hair, messing it up for the first time I'd ever seen. "It's not what it sounds like," he finally managed. "Really?" Lily's voice cracked. "Because it sounds exactly like you and Mom were using my father to fund everything while planning to cut him out completely." Dana stepped forward then, her perfectly composed face suddenly animated with anger. "Don't you dare put this on me, Lily. Your father is the one who canceled everything without a word. He humiliated all of us." "Stop," I said quietly. All eyes turned to me. "Let's be clear about what happened here. If I wanted to be vindictive, I would have let this wedding proceed, and watched it collapse when the venues realized there was no insurance, when the caterers didn't get their final authorizations. That would have been public humiliation. I gestured to the papers in Lily's hands. What I did was private. I canceled everything myself, I paid the penalties myself, and I took the hit so none of you would be embarrassed in front of your guests. Rick snorted. Oh, sure. You're a real hero. He took a step toward me, hand lifting toward my shoulder in what I recognized as his dominance move. You need to fix this right now, or... I didn't move, just fixed him with a steady stare until his hand froze midair, then slowly lowered back to his side. Or what? I asked quietly. He had nothing. I turned back to Lily, whose face was a battlefield of emotions, fury at Trevor, confusion about her mother's role, and something unreadable when she looked at me. There's still a path forward, I said, softer now. The courthouse is open until 4. I'll pay for a small lunch after, something honest and quick and real. Trevor scoffed. Pass. Lily's head whipped toward him. What? I'm not doing some depressing courthouse thing, Trevor said. My parents invited half their firm. My sister flew in from Denver. So this was never about us, Lily whispered. It was about appearances. Trevor's silence was damning. Lily turned back to me, her eyes brimming with tears that hadn't fallen yet. You still canceled it, she said. You could have talked to me first. The accusation stung, but I held my ground. I did, because you canceled me. Her face crumpled slightly at that. She knew it was true. Rick stepped forward again, this time positioning himself between me and Lily. Come on, he said to her. We're wasting time here. We need to figure out how to salvage this day. Dana nodded. Your father's made his point. Now we need solutions. But there was a new hesitation in Lily's movements as she let them guide her toward the door. She paused at the threshold, looking back at me. I didn't know, she said quietly. About the texts, about what they were planning. I believed her. That was the worst part. I know, I replied. And then they were gone, the door closing behind them with a soft click that somehow felt more final than a slam would have. I stood alone in my living room, looking at the manila envelope they'd left on the table beside my binder of contracts. Everything laid bare, every truth exposed. It should have felt like victory. Instead, I felt hollow. That evening, I sat on the porch with a ledger and vendor emails open on my tablet. The afternoon had faded into evening, and with it, the chaos of the morning had settled into something quieter, but no less final. I scrolled through the emails, confirmation receipts from vendors acknowledging my additional payments to cover their losses beyond the cancellation penalties I'd already absorbed. My phone had been oddly silent for the past few hours. No more texts from Lily. No calls from Dana. Even Trevor and Rick seemed to have run out of steam. It was the calm after the storm, I supposed, though I knew better than to think it would last. Word traveled fast. By 7 o'clock, my sister Megan called to tell me the news was spreading that the wedding never happened. Guests had shown up to locked venue doors, confused, and eventually sent home with apologetic explanations about family emergencies that fooled no one. The Blooms are livid, she said. Robert Bloom left you 3 voicemails already. I heard them trying to convince Lily to reschedule at their country club, but she wasn't having it. I nodded, though Megan couldn't see me through the phone. She read the texts, heard the recording. Yeah, Megan sighed. Trevor blocked her number by morning. Apparently he told his buddies she was too high maintenance when she confronted him about using you for money. That didn't surprise me. Men like Trevor never take responsibility. They just rewrite the narrative to protect their ego. I tapped a few numbers into my ledger, earmarking what remained of the wedding fund. After covering all the vendor losses, which I felt was only right, since none of this was their fault, I still had enough left for some modest home repairs I'd been putting off. The porch railing had been loose for months. The bathroom sink leaked. Small things that somehow felt important now. as if putting my house in order could help put my life back in order, too. "Are you okay?" Megan asked after a moment of silence. "I'm getting there," I answered honestly. "It doesn't feel good, but it feels right." The next few days brought hostile calls that gradually tapered off. Dana's mother called to tell me I was selfish. Rick's brother suggested I needed therapy. A few of Trevor's friends sent texts I deleted without reading. By the third week, the incoming fire had mostly ceased, replaced by an uneasy silence that felt more permanent than temporary. Megan stopped by with coffee one morning, settling beside me on the newly repaired porch steps. "Dana says, if you apologize, they might consider letting you back into family gatherings," she said carefully. "For Lily's sake," I shook my head. "There's nothing to apologize for. I paid for everything. I covered every loss. I protected everyone from public embarrassment by handling it privately. What exactly should I apologize for? Standing up for myself?" Megan sipped her coffee. "I know. I told her you wouldn't go for it. Just passing along the message." The sunset spread across the sky in shades of orange and purple, casting long shadows across my yard. Lily had moved in with Dana and Rick for now, just until she figured things out. According to Megan, Trevor had quietly returned to work at his father's dealership. Any dreams of a fancy house down payment postponed indefinitely. Did I miss my daughter? Of course I did. The ache of her absence was a physical thing, like hunger, but deeper. I missed the little girl who used to practice walking down the aisle with a pillowcase veil. I missed the teenager who'd roll her eyes at my dad jokes but laugh anyway. I even missed the young woman who'd once valued my place in her life. But missing her didn't mean I had to finance my own erasure. It didn't mean I had to stand by while others used me, then pushed me aside when my wallet was empty. As the late sunset finally gave way to dusk, I closed the ledger and set aside my tablet. The accounts were settled. The debts were paid. The truth was known. "Love without respect is merely a bill," I said to the darkening sky. And I don't pay those invoices anymore. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.